Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be starting episode 12 in our series, The Catacombs, where we try to take you on deep dive tutorials and kind of guide you through the process. And with that said, today's topic is going to be all about skills. Skill calculations, skill descriptions, functions, all that kind of stuff. So with that said, if you guys are enjoying this kind of stuff, make sure you like and subscribe, helps everybody out, and let's jump right into it. So the only two files that we're actually going to need to edit today are going to be skills.txt and skill-desk.txt. Obviously, if you're making your own missiles and you got your own thing going on, then that's kind of a separate topic. We'll touch a little bit on it, on how you can reference that stuff, but we won't be going into our own missiles today. So anyways, again, that's just going to be skills.txt, skill-desk.txt, grab those out. We're also going to be taking a look at skill-calc.txt, but we don't need to edit that file. That's a hard-coded file anyways. And then you might also need to look at the strings file. So that would be your skills.json in data local language strings. So if you're needing to change wording and stuff, that's where that would be done. But we're not going to really need to do that for this particular edit. We have already covered that in a previous video. If you haven't seen that, make sure you check out our strings video. Explains all about that. Anyways, we're done yammering on. Those are the two files we'll be editing today. We're going to be changing Firebolt a little bit and doing some custom stuff with that. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize that as we've already pulled out those vanilla files ahead of time. So before we jump into the actual editing, we do need to go over some of the calculations and stuff that are going to be possible. So I just prepared a little short document here. I know some of you guys are already phasing out looking at formulas and thinking of math and stuff, but this is really how you can start customizing things how you like, and I'll go over it the best I can here so that when you go into the actual skill editing, everything's going to make a lot more sense, and you'll be able to breeze through it a lot easier. So with that said, we need to understand that we can use formulas and that they're organized like so. So you're going to have your kind of the type of thing that you're looking at in the formula. So that could be a stat you're looking at, a skill, a missile. You're trying to find out some information about one of these. In quotes, you're going to have the name of whatever that is. So again, the name of the stat or the skill, etc. And then finally, the .z is going to be the type of or the exact field or calculation for that thing. So here are some examples here. I want to go over these to make more sense of this formula and how it breaks down. So we can see that for the X part, the type, we're looking in this example at a stat. And the exact stat we're looking at, again, the name of that stat is going to be strength. And then the exact field or calculation that we're trying to find out about that strength stat is the accrued total. So how many points are invested in that stat. With the next example, we're looking at a skill, the fireball skill, and we're trying to see the base level of that skill. So that doesn't count, any plus to skills from items and stuff. This is hard points invested only. If it was just dot level, then that includes item skills as well. That's like the total skill level. And then finally, as one last example, we can see that in this one, we're taking a look at a missile. And again, that missile is just fireball. And we are looking at the EDMN calculation, which we'll get into that in a couple minutes here, but that is the minimum elemental damage. So you can see how you can start referencing very specific things. So when you're trying to base your damage or your calculations however you want, you can use that to, again, address very specific things. And if you've been ignoring me, you can just kind of read this as a, I've been talking. Once you understand that, again, we can look at, for example, the exact skill level that the player currently has invested in Fireball, then we can do some other things. So we do have access to like special conditions, and that's going to be the formula structure for that. So again, just like before, I'm going to break this down, make some sense of it. So first we have the formula itself. So that can be something like this up here, the complete thing you typed out, and then you're trying to compare it to something. So is it greater than or less to 5? Is it equal to 69? Whatever. And then finally, you have your true, false things to do. So you got the question mark to indicate if it's true, do this, and then the colon, if it's false, do that. So that's how that works. And then again, here's an example of how that might work. So you might have a condition that says if the player's total strength investment is exactly equal to 69 points, then set this value to 100. If it's not exactly 69 strength, then set that value to 1. So I don't know, maybe you're just trolling with your players a little bit, giving them some hidden bonus on something, you know, whatever. It's just an example of how that can work. You can also nest these kind of if-else statements inside of each other. So a more advanced example of that might be this. You can say if the character strength is exactly 69, then do this. And this will now check to see if the skill or if the character has maxed out their fireball skill. So again, if the base level is 20, that means they've invested all 20 hard points into it. Then make the value parameter 3, which is par 3, and again, we're going to get into all this, I promise. Make that value read whatever that is and multiply it by 2. But if they don't have 69 strength or they don't have fireball maxed out, then just use par 3, don't multiply it. So again, you can start setting kind of if-else conditions so that values can change depending on certain conditions. Pretty obvious. And then finally, we'll talk about some special logic. This is a simpler one to understand, but basically you can pipe things in and have the game either always choose the minimum of the two values, always choose the maximum of the two values, or just choose a random number between those. So you can use formulas in this as well. So again, it's just separated by like a comma inside parentheses. So in this example, we're just comparing the total skill level of fireball to the value 50. So in this example here, it's always going to choose the lowest of these two values. So, you know, as long as your fireball level is under level 50, then it's going to choose whatever that value is. If it's, again, same thing, as soon as it's anything under level 50, it's just going to choose the higher one of the two. And then finally, anything between here, it's going to randomly pick a number between whatever your fireball level is and 50. So that's an example of how calculations work, how you can start embedding them. I definitely recommend checking out a lot of the ones that are used in vanilla. You can get an idea of how some of them can be combined and used together. But now that we understand formulas and how we can use them, now we're ready to jump into making our skill, assigning calculations and new descriptions to it, and all that stuff. So with that said, let's go ahead and start with skills.txt. And so we want to do a couple things here. In our example, we're going to make a very OP firebolt. So we're going to make a firebolt that's basically also multiple shot, just to show you an example of how you can change things, how functions relate to all of it, and then finally how we can assign descriptions to those new functions. One thing I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to hide everything before multiple shot. And we'll use that just to make sense of things as we're copying along. And then I'm going to also hide everything in between that and firebolt so that they're right next to each other. And again, this is just going to make it easy for us visually to see what's going on, and we'll hide everything else, again, for visual purposes. So this is the skill we're going to be editing. We're going to be just kind of doing our own thing with firebolt, but we're going to be taking some inspiration from multiple shot and kind of merging the two into a skill that we like. So the number one thing we're going to do anytime we're editing text files is we're going to look at the data guide. So Blizzard includes this data guide. You guys have seen me go over it many times, but it is included in that Excel folder, so you can freely access it there. They have not updated it since 2.4, so it's definitely missing some stuff, but it's mostly accurate and will help a lot for what we're doing. So again, we're starting with skills.txt, so we're just going to go ahead and skip straight to that section. And the first thing we need to understand is that every skill is controlled by a function or it's left default. So you can see here Firebolt has nothing for the serve do function, as that might imply. This is the function that the server does on its end, and that server means basically the game as far as the internal calculations go, not necessarily online. And then the serve st function is the start. So this is something it does at the start of the skill, and this is something it actually does, to carry out the skill. And again, this is for the server section. And then we have the same kind of section, but for the client side. This is what you see. This is what the game is told to do on your behalf, basically just to make things match up and stuff like that. What we want to do then is if we look here at what these mean, so we'll start with the serve st function. And again, we have a value of 4 currently, and we can see that that is for AMA start check quantity. And what it does is verify that the caster unit has enough weapon ammunition. Well, we don't want it to be used with a bow like a normal Amazon, so we're actually going to ignore that serve start function instead of copying it. And now let's look at what the serve do function is. And we can see that for the serve do, number 8, we can see that is AMA do multiple shot. So this specific function, again, I recommend reading all these, and we're going to, just to make this easy, shoot a number of missiles toward a target location. If the weapon class is a bow, then it's going to use serve missile A. If it's not, it's going to use serve missile B. Other than that, you can read what it does for each calculation. It controls, how many missile spawns, all that stuff. But on the left, we can see all the different columns or fields that this function will use. So without, if this does not have Calc 4, for example, like this one does, it's just not going to use it. This function is not designed to look in that calculation field, so it's just going to ignore it. There might be something else that uses that. So for example, here's a start function that checks calculation 4. So there is some mixing and matching you can do with the start and the do functions to try and get it to read different columns that you may like for what you're trying to do. But again, for our point, we care that, all right, function 8 is what we want because we want it to do a multiple shot type effect. And we just need to understand that we can control some of this stuff through these calc fields, and that it's going to pull its missile visual and the missile it uses from serve missile B, because we are not using a bow. So it's not going to be using A. So now that I've explained all that, again, we're going to put 8 in for our serve do function. Instead of using the global server missile like it would normally do, we're going to cut that out and put it into serve missile B, because again, we're not using a bow. And then we're going to go all the way over until we get to the same area for the client, and we're going to look at what these do. So we're going to just do a quick search on that. And we can see that for function 11, again, it's a check quantity thing. We don't want it to check quantity, so we're just going to skip right over that and go to the serve do or the client do section. And we can see that normally it uses 17. And let's see what that does. Again, we have multiple shot where it uses client missile A and B just like the previous one, and then uses calc 1 and 2 to determine, the number of missiles and all that. So just like before, we're going to go ahead and copy the 17 one that we do want. We're going to remove the client missile from the global entry here and paste it into the B entry, so that it's how we want. And then obviously, if you wanted to change the actual missile it's using, this is the time to go ahead and change that as you want. But for our example, we're just trying to show you how you can kind of edit this to your liking. So we've changed all the actual functions for the skill. So again, now it will do a multiple shot, even though it's a firebolt skill. We gave it the function to do that. However, it's still missing a lot of the information to define how many arrows it's allowed to use and things like that. So let's go ahead and address that, and we can start by doing that in the calculation fields. So if we just keep scrolling over here, we can start seeing our calculation fields. So I'm going to go ahead and expand these a little bit, and I'll do some of the descriptions so you can understand what's going on here. All right, so we can see, let me expand that one just a little more, that the calculation fields it mentions, so I'm just sorry for rewinding on you here. We're going to go back to that serve do function. And we're going to go check out 8 again. Remember, it used Calc 1, 2, and 3. Calc 1 to control the number of missiles created. Calc 2 to control the activation frame. And then Calc 3 to control how many of those missiles are allowed to trigger like item effects and stuff. So we can see here that all of that matches. Calc 1 is the number of missiles created. Calc 2 is the activation frame. And Calc 3 is the number of missiles that can trigger items. So we can see here now that one of our entries has appeared, or one of our special modifiers we talked about before has appeared. It's using a min value modifier. So it's taking just 2 values. In this case, it's taking a calculation of ln12 and 24. So whichever number is lower of the 2, it's going to use that. So that means obviously that once len 12 gets higher than 24, then it's always going to use 24, and this is the max number of missiles that can be used in the game. And you may ask yourself, well, what the hell is ln12? For that, now we can look at our skill calc file, because a lot of these entries will be shown in here. So this is a hard-coded reference file. We can't do any edits here, but it's going to explain exactly how all these work. So you can see that an ln12 calculation does the following formula. It adds parameter 1. So let's go ahead and find out what parameter 1 is real quick. So we can see parameter 1 is 2. So it's going to take 2 plus the current skill level, LVL for the current skill level, minus 1, and then it's going to times that by whatever's in par 2, which is 1. And again, this is the number of missiles. So ln stands just for basically level plus n. So it's going to, if you have a level 20 skill, we'll just do the math real quick. It's going to take 2 plus 20 minus 1, which is 19. So we're now at 2 plus 19 equals 21. 21 times par 2, which is 1, is obviously 21. So it knows to use 21 missiles now because you have a level 20 skill there. So again, this is just how it breaks things down, and how it helps define all this. But again, if it doesn't use something in Calc 4 or 5 or whatever, you can't just force it. That's decided by the function. So anyways, now that we've explained it all, we're going to copy all this because we obviously just want to have it for our firebolt, and we can change things if we wanted to. Like for example, this is a damage bonus it gets from guided arrow. We can see here from the par 4, it gets a 12% damage per level increase from guided arrow. Since our sorceress doesn't have guided arrow, maybe we wanted to put this on fire mastery or something instead. So now it gets that 12% increase from fire mastery. So you can start changing the formulas how you like, but we're going to basically leave everything else how it is. You guys understand and probably want me to stop talking about it as is. So again, use the calculations how you like. They can get very complicated, but just go slow and take it step by step and you'll be all right. But we also need to copy these parameters because, again, we're referencing them. So, if we go, if we go look at here, we're referencing par 3 for the second calculation. Again, this is the missile activation frame. We're also referencing par 4 here for the added damage. So we just need to make sure we've added those. Again, we're not going to bother changing anything. We're just showing you how you can combine functions in all of that for now, but we're now done with everything that we need to do. So we can come over here and adjust our synergies, and actually, why don't we just add one in here? So you can see that right now in this E damage sim per calc field, it's currently adding the base level of Fireball and Meteor. So again, base level being hard points only, not counting items. It's adding those together and then multiplying it by parameter 8, and parameter 8 is 16. So this is the again, 16% damage per level synergy, and maybe we wanted to add, again, Fire Mastery or something like that. So we'll do plus skill, quote, Fire Mastery, end quote, end brackets, or actually, sorry, we're going to do dot B level and then the end of the bracket. So again, now it's still going to add everything together. We just added a Fire Mastery synergy to it, and then it's going to multiply that by 16. And if you wanted them different numbers and stuff, you could split up your formula that way. But we've made all the edits that we want to Firebolt. So I apologize for the kind of side roads we had to take to explain it all. But let's go ahead and do a quick recap so we've understood. We've changed both the serve do and client do functions to use the multiple shot in-game kind of function. We've adjusted the missiles to match the new kind of requirement for this function. And then finally, we've added the new calculations and parameters to make everything work and, be able to define it to whatever custom stuff we want. So everything's all good. I'm going to go ahead and launch the game and show you, how everything is working now. So let's go ahead and get that out of the way real quick. But obviously we haven't edited descriptions or anything like that. So when we go into the game, although it should work, as long as I didn't mess anything up here, we still need to edit how it displays, and that'll be the next part of this. So we're going to take our slow sorceress and make our way out to town. And there you go. So you can see I have a level 10 Firebolt right now. So it's currently casting with that 11 Firebolts, but it's in the multiple shot function, but it's still using the Firebolt missile. So it's still going to be doing fire damage and, all that stuff like before. So we've just kind of merged the functions together, if you will. Just like normal, if you increase the level, you're going to get more Firebolts. Just like multiple shot worked, because we didn't change the calculations for that. But obviously our skill description doesn't mention any of this. It doesn't mention that it's a Firebolt or that it, has multiple shots. It, just ignores all of it because we haven't updated it yet. So now that we've seen it working and, we're good there, let's go ahead and open up skill desk.txt. And now we can start putting all the pieces together and making sense of it. So this might sound pretty self-explanatory, but just make sure you check the skill desk column so we can see that Firebolt uses a skill desk named Firebolt. And so that's the one that we're going to be, editing today. So here's our entry here. We're going to go and lock these up and explain how this works. So there's a couple of important things to know. I've already gone over icons and stuff in a previous video, so check that out if you need. Some of the things we'll care about in this video are going to be your string names. So this is where it references the actual key in skills.json to give it, whatever name it needs. So again, if it's called firebolt or, warmth or whatever. And then finally, for some skills, you're going to have a desk dam entry for the damage. So some of them are going to have special modifiers, maybe like a barbarian skill that, or a paladin skill or something like that does both physical and elemental damage. Well, that's how this is how you tell it to display both of those entries instead of just, one damage number. It'll show both your physical and your cold damage separately, things like that. So you might need to, again, look at the Blizzard guide to see exactly what function 17 for Death Dam does, so you can pick the proper one. We don't need to mess with any of that. We're going to use the standard 5 function, which just basically takes your elemental damage plus your masteries, and we're going to use that. So now we can get into the actual descriptions, and we're going to start by explaining the desk line. So you can see 3 of these columns in total. Here's desk line 1. If we scroll all the way over, we'll see desk line 2 basically, and then we'll see over here desk line 3. So these are your kind of 3 lines, and that's important because this is how those are split up. So for attributes that don't change with level, so for example in vanilla, the Blizzard duration and kind of casting delay just stays here, while as you increase in levels, both your cold damage and mana cost are changing. So they're split up in these 2 different sections, and then your synergies are kind of always split up into your 3rd line here. But just know that these are backwards, if you will. It's not top to bottom. I didn't misplace them. Line 2 is the kind of topmost section that doesn't change. Line 1 is your changes with kind of skill level section, and then level 3 is your synergies. So now that we've just understood that, now we can come back here and we can start understanding how some of this works. So again, we're going to go back to Firebolt, and we're going to look at our desk line 1. One important note is that we need to once more check this function. So we can see that desk line 1 uses function 75 for this particular entry. So just once more, we're going to go back to the Blizzard data guide. This time we're going to pull up skilled desk.txt, and we're going to see exactly what this means and how it works. So if we scroll down here to our desk line 1 and, set your entries, we can see that 75 does exactly this. It inserts whatever is in Calc A and Calc B into the string that's in text A. So let's just make sense of that real quick. So for example, we got this firebolt here. It's taking the string entry str skill 5. So I'm going to go ahead and just open up that skill JSON file. We're going to do a search for str skill 5, and we can see that what that is referring to is fire damage. And again, because it's using function 75, it's taking 2 values, the value in Calc A and Calc B. And so if we look at what Calc A is, it's ENMA, whatever that means, and EXMA, again, whatever that means. So once more, we're going to go back to that skill calc file, and now we can look at what ENMA, XMA, all that means. So we can see them here, ENMA and EXMA. Let me go ahead and expand those out, and we can see it is the minimum elemental damage with your mastery included. So obviously that's the proper calculation for a firebolt that, with fire mastery. So that is what it's using for both the minimum and the maximum values. And because there is 2 entries, again, Calc A and Calc B, that is why in our JSON we have 2% Ds. So we got Calc A, the minimum, Calc B, the maximum. So this is, again, just how it's splitting it up, and where it puts it is depending on, whether it's desk line 1, 3, etc. So in the desk line 1, it's only putting currently the damage, which again, if we just go back, this is the stuff that's changing with level. So if we were to look at Fireball in game, that's the only thing that changes with level. And then if we go to our Desc line 2 section, we can see that STR skill 3, which should be our mana cost. There we go. So we got STR skill 3. This is our mana cost. So that is just kind of stays the same with this particular skill. Obviously, if you're changing that, that's when we can come in here and instead of using USMC, which again is just going to be one of these in-game hard-coded calculations that is used to determine mana cost, then you can switch that around or do as you need. And then we have our skill synergies here. So I've explained a lot. Let's go ahead and add the actual changes we need and get you guys going with what we're trying to do. So we're going to add a new entry for that shooting multiple arrows. So let's go ahead and just look for, I think it's just %D arrows. Yeah, there we go. So normally it would be string skill 9 is the key, and it just says, use %D arrows. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this, and we'll just add a new entry at the bottom. And I'm going to call this custom FB shot. So that's our key because we're super inventive, and we're going to call this firebolts instead. Because it's no longer shooting arrows, it's shooting firebolts. And then we're going to update our ID just to something high, just something like that. So we've made our change. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the proper folder. I didn't do that yet. All right, so this is our updated skills.json, and this is what we're using for our new key entry. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to our firebolt here. And again, this is where it's showing the damage. Well, because the missiles also change with level, I'm going to go ahead and add that here. But I don't want to use function 75 because it's not going to be 2 values I need. I only need 1 value, which is the number of missiles. And so we can see that for that, we can just use function 74. That inserts calc A into text A, and we're done. So that's exactly what I want. So again, we're just going to go over here to Firebolt. We're going to use function 74. For our string skill, we're going to use custom FB shot because that's the key we just made. And then for our calc, we want it to be what we set our multiple shot arrows to. So there's 2 ways we can do this. The way I recommend is the way I'm going to show you now. If we go to our calc 1, which if you remember from a couple minutes ago, this is the number of missiles created in this calc 1 field. So I can copy this formula here and paste that into the calculation field, and it's going to go ahead and show me the correct number of missiles. However, what I would do is instead use calc 1 as the reference. And we can do that by doing CLC1. So it knows to look in the calc 1 field for the answer. And this way, if you change this later, you decide that, oh, you know what, it was too OP having this many missiles, or no, I need even more, and you change that value some, you don't also have to come back into the scale Desc file and update this because it's still going to be looking at calc 1. So anytime you change this, the description basically updates itself. So this is how I recommend doing it. And then, you can still do adjustments from here if you need. So if for some reason you need to double the value of, what's in that calc field, but only for the description, then you can do that. But again, this is how we can just add that actual display to the skill. And the only other thing we want to do now is add our synergy that we added before. So you can see how these other ones work, and because we're basically just copying everything, we're going to go ahead and copy all this. We're going to keep it on function 76 because that happens to be what we want for this. We're taking 2 texts. So we're taking the fire damage text as well as the skill name. whatever that happens to be, and we're combining them into one output, and then we're giving them the value of par 8. So just as a last reminder, par 8 was that synergy bonus for the skills. So this is how it's done. So we still want it to add fire damage. Whoops. So we're going to go ahead and leave that, but it's no longer skill name 56 that it gets the synergy from. We added it to Fire Mastery just for lulz. So if we go here, we can see that Fire Mastery is called skills name 61. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that, and that's going to be our kind of output 2 for the synergy and skill desk. So again, instead of skill name 56, it's skills name 61, and that's going to be for Fire Mastery. So anyways, we're all set. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Thanks for being patient with the whole process, but we've explained calculations, how they work, and some of the different ways you can use them. We've gone over descriptions, how they interact with skills, how you can use the skill calcs text file to reference those functions and kind of mix them all together. So we should see now that we've already know that our missile works, but we should also see our description now correctly shows how many fire bolts are being launched with every missile. So you can see here that I'll do a quick respec, and you can see here that everything is kind of updating correctly as it should now. So that is an example of how you can get things modified how you'd like, and not only create new skills, but update all the calculations and descriptions to match. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and have a great day. Bye.